Let's kick things off with a question that gets right to the heart of how you see the world. You probably just assume that when you look at something, you're seeing it exactly as it is. But what if I told you that one of the most basic things your brain does, seeing two things as the same, is actually a powerful illusion, something you actively do, not something you passively find?
So take a look at these two robins. Your brain, in a split second, goes, Robin, they're the same. But are they? I mean, really? If you could zoom in, down to every single feather, every cell, every last atom, you'd realize they are completely and totally unique. In fact, no two things in the entire universe are perfectly identical.
And right there, that creates a huge problem. Because if everything is one of a kind, our world would just be this incomprehensible chaos of infinite detail. How could you even have a concept like tree if every single tree was treated as a completely new, unique thing? Language would break down, science would be impossible, the whole thing just falls apart.
Luckily for us, our brains have a kind of superpower to deal with all this chaos. It's a specific mental tool, an operation that lets us build a coherent world, and it's called the abstraction of identification. Now, the key word on this slide, the one that changes everything, is creation. This isn't about passively noticing a similarity. It is an active top-down choice that you are making. You aren't finding sameness out in the world. You are literally making it. You know, a biologist deliberately treats thousands of totally unique robins as the same for a very specific purpose, to study the behavior of the species.
And this incredibly powerful tool has a surprisingly simple instruction manual. It's built on 3 classic rules of equality. First up, you've got reflexivity. A is A. A thing is the same as itself. Seems obvious, I know, but it's the bedrock. Then there's symmetry. If A is the same as B, then B has to be the same as A. And finally, transitivity. If A is the same as B and B is the same as C, well then A is the same as C. That's it. That's how we build our categories.
This quote just nails it perfectly. The word identified literally implies an action that has already happened. Sameness isn't some feature of the world we just stumble upon. It's a structure that we build. It's the work of human hands, or in this case, the work of our minds. Okay, so this brings us to a really critical distinction we need to make. The idea of making something the same is a world away from just noticing that two things look the same. And this chart lays it out beautifully. On one side, you have identification. That's an active top-down choice. That's you saying, for my specific purpose, I am going to treat these as the same. But on the other side, you have indistinguishability. That's a passive bottom-up observation. It's just you saying, you know what, with my eyes or my instruments, I just can't tell them apart. One is a deliberate act of building, the other is just a limit of your perception. Now, you might be thinking this is all getting a little philosophical, but get this. This one tool, the abstraction of identification, actually helps us crack some of the oldest, most stubborn puzzles in the history of logic. For centuries, this was considered the supreme law of all thought, the law of identity. A equals A. A thing is what it is. It seems totally unshakable, right? The most fundamental truth there is. But is it actually all that helpful? I mean, saying a car is a car doesn't actually tell you anything new about the car. It's a circle. It's true, for sure, but it's completely uninformative. It doesn't help us build any new or complex ideas. The plain old A equals A formula is just too weak for the heavy lifting. It can't solve those classic paradoxes, like what makes you the same person you were 10 years ago. And it gets all tangled up trying to separate this is the exact same object from this is the same type of object. Our tool, the abstraction of identification, gives us the power to handle that nuance. And here's where we get a really cool insight from a different school of logic. It suggests we've been thinking about concepts all wrong. What if a concept isn't some perfect, single, razor-thin point in space? What if, instead, concepts are more like flexible ranges or intervals? Just think about the color red. There's no single perfect red frequency, right? There's a whole spectrum, crimson, scarlet, cherry, that we actively choose to identify as belonging to the category of red. We create a tolerated range of difference, and that interval becomes the concept itself. Okay, so let's bring this all back down to earth. Why does any of this philosophical stuff matter in the real world? Well, because this very tool is the engine that drives all of scientific discovery. The universe is just infinitely complex, right? A storm of chaotic, unique events happening all the time.
To study it, a scientist can't possibly look at everything at once. They have to simplify, they have to choose what to focus on, and just as important, what to ignore. And this is exactly how they do it. They use the abstraction of identification every single day. They take billions of unique water molecules and treat them as an identical, idealized thing so they can study fluid dynamics. They intentionally ignore stuff like air resistance and a physics problem to isolate the force of gravity. They are actively, deliberately creating sameness to translate messy reality into clean, workable theories. And that really brings us to the big takeaway here. The coherent, understandable world of categories and concepts that you live in isn't something you're just passively seeing. It's a world you are actively building, moment by moment, by using this incredible mental tool to create sameness where none truly exists. And that leaves us with a pretty profound final thought. If you're constructing something as fundamental as sameness, what other parts of your reality are you inventing too?